Alpha Business Media. This is an analysis from Alpha Business Media. Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we are looking at a sector that has, well, it's effectively been the engine room for a nation's economy for the last decade.
It really has.
We're talking about Nepal, and we're talking about cement. And I know on the surface, bags of gray powder might not sound like the most thrilling topic.
Not exactly glamorous, no.
But the report we're breaking down today paints a picture that is, it's incredibly dramatic.
It really is. If you look at the data, it's a classic story of industrial ambition hitting a very hard wall of economic reality.
The report opens with this really stark contrast. It describes the last 10 years in Nepal as a thunderous roar of construction. Grinding units spinning, kilns firing, trucks moving day and night. But it suggests that the music isn't just stopping.
The orchestra is packing up and leaving.
Exactly. We're looking at a prediction of a massive contraction. Specifically, that by 2026, a wave of mergers and acquisitions is going to wipe out or absorb at least 20 major cement giants.
It's a huge number when you consider the size of the market. We're talking about a third of the industry potentially disappearing or changing hands in a really short window.
And the phrase that jumped out at me in the reading was Darwinian reckoning.
Right.
That feels aggressive for a business report. It sounds like something from a nature documentary.
It is aggressive, but I think it's accurate. We aren't just talking about companies having a bad quarter or, a dip in profits. We're looking at an evolutionary filter.
Okay.
The source material uses the term malinvestment, which is a polite economist's way of saying billions of rupees were poured into a hole that is now filling up with water.
Right. So this is about the difference between a mature industry and just a bubble.
It is a very big one.
Okay, so before we get to the reckoning, I want to understand how we dug this hole in the first place. Because 10 years ago, cement was the golden ticket in Nepal. You couldn't lose money on it. How did things flip so fast?
To understand the crash, you really have to go back to the tragedy that started the boom, the 2015 earthquake.
Ah, right, the reconstruction needs.
Exactly. The earthquake created this massive, immediate demand shock. Suddenly, you needed millions of tons of cement to rebuild homes, heritage sites, all this infrastructure. But here's the economic trap that I think people missed. That disaster pulled future demand into the present. It compressed maybe 10 years of normal consumption into a frantic 3 or 4 year window.
So the charts showed this completely vertical line of growth, and investors just assumed that was the new normal.
Precisely. Everyone, the private sector, the banks, the government, they all looked at those sales numbers and projected them out to infinity.
And the government was pushing this whole narrative of hydropower, new airports.
Exactly. Hydropower, international airports, highways. So banks looked at cement and they saw a gilt-edged investment. It looked completely risk-free.
And was the government just handing out licenses to anyone who asked?
Indiscriminately is the word the report uses. They were approving capacity without really doing the macro-level math on where all that cement would actually go once the houses were rebuilt.
And now we have the bill for all that enthusiasm. I want to pause on the numbers in this report because the gap is just terrifying.
It's staggering.
The installed capacity of the industry, so the amount they can make, is nearly 25 million metric tons.
Correct. That is the size of the machine they built.
But the domestic demand is plateauing at around, 9 million metric tons?
It's an overhang of almost 300%. It's huge.
That's like building a 50-story hotel and never having more than 15 floors occupied.
And you're still paying the mortgage on all 50 of those floors.
Right.
That is the key to understanding why this is so dangerous. In the cement business, you have these massive fixed costs. You have loans for the machinery. You have to keep the kilns hot. You can't just turn them off and on like a light switch.
So if you're not running at high capacity,
You aren't running at 70 or 80% utilization. You are bleeding cash.
and the report says the industry average right now is less than 40%.
Less than 40. Which brings us to, I think, the most dangerous concept in this entire analysis, zombification.
I've seen this term in tech finance, but what does a zombie look like in, heavy manufacturing?
A zombie company is one that's generating just enough cash flow to pay the interest on its loans, maybe the electricity bill,
But that's it?
but not enough to pay down the principal debt or invest in maintenance. They're technically alive, the factory is open, but they are economically dead.
So why don't they just close down?
Because they're desperate for liquidity. They need cash coming in the door just to survive the week. So what do?
They slash prices?
They slash prices, they start selling cement at cost or maybe even below cost just to keep the cash register ringing.
And that just drags the whole market down with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates a red ocean, a bloody shark tank. The zombies are desperate, so they drop the price. The healthy companies have to match that price to keep their market share.
And suddenly, nobody is making any money.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Prices per sack have dropped significantly over the last 18 months because of this exact dynamic.
Okay, so if I'm the CEO of one of these struggling plants, I'm looking for an escape hatch. I'm looking at the map. I see Uttar Pradesh and Bihar right across the border in India. Huge population, massive construction needs. Why can't I just put my cement on a truck and send it south?
You would think that's the obvious solution.
Yeah.
And the government even tried to help with an export subsidy in the 2022-23 budget, but there's a gatekeeper.
Which is?
The Bureau of Indian Standards, or BIS.
Is that just a stamp of approval, like a certified safe sticker or something?
On paper, yes. It's a quality standard, but our analysis suggests it's functioning as something much more potent.
Okay.
A strategic non-tariff barrier. Think of it less as a standard and more as a great filter.
So India's protecting its own industry.
Of course. They have their own massive cement industry. They aren't going to make it easy for Nepali competitors to just flood their market.
So how hard are we talking? Is it just filling out a form?
Oh, it's much more than paperwork. To get BIS certification, you need sophisticated in-house chemical labs. You need total traceability of your limestone, your coal. You have to pay for Indian inspectors to fly in, stay at your site, audit your entire process.
And I'm guessing these inspectors are not in a rush.
Not at all. It can take months, sometimes years. And it costs millions of rupees. Now remember, zombies.
Right. They have no cash to begin with.
So they're trapped. They need to export to get cash, but they need cash to get the certification to export.
It's a classic catch-22.
It is, and it's created this two-tiered industry. You have the winners, a few companies like Argakanchi, Palpa, and a couple of others. They saw this coming. They had the capital and the foresight to start this process years ago.
So they're the ones who are actually getting across the bridge.
They are the exception. For them, India is a lifeline. It lets them scale up production, which lowers their cost per bag. But for the rest, the BIS is an executioner. The report is very blunt about this. If a company is only starting the BIS process now, it is almost certainly too late. By the time they get through all that bureaucracy, the domestic consolidation will have already crushed them.
Which brings us to the core thesis of this whole thing, the M&A wave. The report argues that consolidation is the only real cure for this market. But I want to dig into the mechanics of that. Why can't these 60 companies just, downsize and wait it out? Why is it merge or die?
Because of a concept called the diseconomies of fragmentation.
Okay, unpack that for me. I know economies of scale, but what is this?
It's the opposite. Imagine you have 60 different cement companies. That means you have 60 boards of directors, 60 marketing teams, 60 HR departments.
60 different supply chains trying to order coal.
Exactly. 60 supply chains ordering coal and limestone separately.
So you're just paying for the same overhead 60 times over? It sounds incredibly inefficient.
It's wildly redundant. You have all this overhead cost spread out over these tiny slivers of market share. Now, compare that to the giants.
The FDI players. Hongxi Huaxin.
The apex predators, as the report calls them.
Right.
They have plants that produce maybe 2 million tons a year. A local player might have a plant doing 500,000. The whole math of cement is about volume. The big plants have automated quarrying. They buy coal in massive bulk shipments that dwarf what a local player can buy.
So their cost to produce one single bag of cement is just way lower.
Significantly lower. So in a price war, Hongxi can sell at a price where they still make a tiny profit, or at least break even.
But the local guy is losing 50 rupees a bag.
And that is why M&A is inevitable. The big players will swallow the small ones, not just to get bigger, but really to survive this price war.
But why buy them? I mean, if they're failing, why not just let them go bankrupt and pick up the pieces later?
Well, for 3 reasons. First, you buy them to shut them down.
To reduce supply?
You remove that excess supply from the market, which helps stabilize prices for everyone who's left. Second, and this is crucial, you want their limestone.
Their mining rights.
Exactly. Limestone is a finite resource. If you want to be the king of cement for the next 50 years, you need reserves. So you buy the failing company to get control of their mine.
And the third reason?
You simply remove a desperate competitor who is destroying market value for everyone.
It's like business chess. You're just clearing pieces off the board.
It is. And that leads us to the three scenarios the report outlines for 2026. It basically categorizes every company in Nepal into one of three buckets.
Okay, let's go through them so our listeners can really visualize the landscape in 3 years. Bucket number 1.
Bucket one is the apex predators. These are the 5 to 7 groups that will survive and dominate. We mentioned Hongxi and Huaxin. Also, the top Nepali exporters like Argakanchi, Sarbatam, Palpa. These are the buyers.
You have the cash, the scale, and the BIS certification.
You have it all.
Okay. Bucket number 2.
The acquired. This is about 20 mid-sized producers. Now, these aren't necessarily bad companies. They have brands, they have mines, but they're too small to fight the price war, and they were too slow on the BIS process. They're stuck.
Stuck in the middle. So their best option is just to sell.
Their only good option is to sell. They will face what the report calls value-destroying bankruptcy if they don't. For the owners, selling to an apex predator is painful. I'm sure it's admitting defeat, but it preserves some value. They get a check. If they wait, they get nothing.
And that brings us to bucket number 3. The grim one. Who falls into this category?
These are mostly the small, standalone grinding units. And it's important to understand the technical difference here.
Okay, yeah, explain that. What is a grinding unit versus a full plant?
A full integrated plant takes limestone, heats it in a massive kiln, and turns it into clinker, these hard nodules that are the base of cement. A grinding unit doesn't have a kiln. It just buys clinker from someone else and grinds it into powder.
So they're essentially just middlemen processing someone else's product.
That's a good way to put it. And in this market, they have zero leverage. They don't own the mines. They don't control their raw material costs. And they often have outdated tech.
And nobody even wants to buy them.
There's nothing to buy. A big player like Hongxi doesn't need an old, inefficient grinder. They have their own. So these companies won't be acquired. They will simply cease to exist.
Wow.
They'll shut their gates, sell the scrap metal, and that's it.
It's a harsh reality. And it brings up a huge question about policy, right? You're talking about factories closing, jobs being lost, local investments wiped out. The instinct for any politician is to step in.
Of course.
To say, we have to save these factories. We need to save these jobs.
That is the instinct.
Oh.
But the report has a section called The Hard Truth, and it argues that government intervention here would be a grave mistake.
Why? I mean, isn't saving jobs the government's responsibility?
In the short term, it feels right, but economically. If you bail out these inefficient factories, you are just creating more zombies. You are using taxpayer money to prop up businesses that are structurally sick.
So you're actually punishing the efficient companies by making them compete with subsidized failures.
Precisely. You prevent the healthy companies from growing. You keep the oversupply problem alive. The expert view here is that the government needs to facilitate the funeral, not try to stop it.
Okay.
They need to streamline M&A regulations so these deals can happen quickly. They need to fix bankruptcy laws so assets can be transferred cleanly.
So stop trying to save the sinking ships and focus on making sure the survivors can actually swim.
That is where the government's energy should go, specifically with India. Instead of domestic bailouts, focus on diplomacy. G2G government-to-government talks.
To ease the BIS process.
Use diplomatic capital to smooth the BIS process for the survivors. Make it easier for the winners to export. That's how you build a robust industry for the future.
It's a total shift in mindset from protect everyone to empower the strong.
And that really brings us to the closing thought the report offers. It suggests that this M&A wave, as painful as it is, isn't actually a sign of failure. It's a sign of maturation.
Growing pains.
Serious growing pains. But look at any developed economy. Germany, the US, Japan, they don't have 60 fragmented cement companies. They have a few highly efficient giants.
Right.
What we are seeing is Nepal's industry finally growing up. This crash is actually the transition from a cottage industry mindset to a potential industrial export powerhouse.
So the question isn't who will fall, because we already know many will. The real question is whether the survivors can actually transform Nepal into a real exporter.
That is the gamble. If this consolidation goes right, then in 2030, Nepal could be a major supplier of construction materials to all of North India. But to get there, we have to go through the fire of 2026 first.
A Darwinian reckoning indeed.
This
It's a fascinating, if a little sobering, look at how market forces actually work when a bubble bursts. We'll be watching very closely to see which of those names end up in that apex predator bucket and which ones fade into history.
It's going to be a very volatile few years.
Absolutely. Thank you for walking us through the math and the madness of it all. And to you, listening, thanks for being part of the deep dive. We hope this gave you a clearer picture of why that silence is coming to the cement corridors. Catch you on the next one.